Okay. Well, firstly, yeah, hello, good afternoon to everyone who's joining us on this recording. And secondly, hello and good afternoon to Derek and Adam, who are the Vice Chair and Committee Member of the IOSH Broadcasting and Telecommunications Group. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar, this is a quick fire interview, if you want to call it that, on health and safety and kind of careers advice for people looking to potentially change careers or get involved in the telecommunications and broadcasting industry. So we're fortunate enough to be joined today by Derek and Adam, who are going to give us a bit of insight into what we look at from a careers changing point of view, as well as what IOSH are currently doing and what the group itself does. So for those of you that don't know, my name is Tristan Morrison. I'm a member of the Future Leaders Steering Group Committee, and today I'm joined by Al Bergera, who's also a member of the steering group. So I suppose we'll just dive straight in there, really. Firstly, OSH, with regards to broadcasting and telecommunications, could be any number of roles, jobs across a range of industries. But from your experience and previous job role experience, do you find it tends to lead more to an operational site-based industry, or is it more paper, desktop, and office-based?
Okay, so Derek, Vice Chair for the IOSH Group, so welcome. So in the number of years I've worked in the industry, we find that if you have a junior role, tends to be more of a field-based role. Essentially, you're doing a lot of site auditing. You'll be potentially be involved in training, and you'll be doing sort of like inductions with that type of work. And as you gradually progress and go through the career ladder, you then become very desk-based, research-driven, and collaborative. Essentially, not only within the organisation that you work for, but also with other stakeholders. So, and essentially, some of those may be legal, or in our case, for me, I definitely dealing with some external stakeholders like HSE and Ofcom, etc., who govern our industry with it. Junior roles will tend to be quite menial initially, but then as you progress, that then expands, and it expands quite rapidly, given the remit of what we expected to do, or where we're at there.
Well, definitely. Yeah, it sounds like there's similar to quite a few industries where you kind of do need that first-hand experience in an actual day-to-day role from an operational side before you can kind of take a step back and focus on the wider picture, I guess. Is there anything you'd like to add on that one, Adam, or can I go into the next?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, you always see a bit of a mix, right? Because I think in most safety roles, you've got that whole kind of sort of process review, and if we got any shared learning, and how you get that kind of engagement with the teams. But yeah, I think telecoms and broadcasting, there's still a lot of lone working. So actually, a lot of engineers out and about visiting sites, or even sort of outside broadcast. So there's a fair bit of the sort of real life, and I think actually there's a lot of challenges in the industry when it comes to that whole working and site visits. So as exactly as Derek was saying, I think some of those projects on site, I think, people maybe see the industry, I think, well, actually it's about, fitting phone lines, but actually, linking comms and, for example, you get some more complex ones. So maybe you have to run a cable over a railway line, and it's like, well, actually now we've got to do that at night. And so you get lots of these little challenges brought in that you can help those teams. So it's bringing some of that expertise. And I honestly do see it as a bit of a blend of, that whole kind of real life and, people being out by themselves. When you are no working, you are that person to be working safely when you've left. And I think getting underneath that culture and that mindset, you can do that by being out on site with the team. So then you take that back and you build it into shared learning. So yeah, absolutely see it as a quite a mix of out and about on site, and then your whole kind of desk and plan and strategy that goes with it.
Fantastic, thank you. And that kind of touches on what I'll be asking next, because we kind of focus on, like you said there, the experience side of it, which is very important. If we were coming to a networking event hosted by the group, and potentially someone coming that didn't have experience or qualifications as such, but they knew they wanted to get involved in the industry, what would you advise they prioritize first? Would it be more one or the other? Would it be trying to get both in whatever way? Or what advice would you have for someone trying to get their foot in the door?
Do you want to answer that, Adam?
Yeah, if I mean, I think it kind of depends, because there are some bits of the industry that are really, really quite specific, and you do have to have those qualifications. I mean, due to a lot of experience in radio rigging, and actually that world, is it's very high risk. There's a lot of qualifications that go alongside climbing masts and towers. But actually, there's another big chunk of the group. So whether it's fixed telecoms, where it's that mix of construction, whether you're doing sort of minor civils in the footway, street works and temporary works. So, actually doing an installation at someone's home, and maybe you're accessing a pole, running a cable across a road to someone's house. There's a lot of little bits around street works and temporary works that go with that. Things like driving. So actually there's a lot of travel in the kind of industry, whether you're doing outside broadcasts, whether you're doing telecoms installation. So actually statistically, the biggest chunk of the incidents and things are still your driving, your slips, trips and falls, that whole kind of looking where you're going. So although there are parts of the industry where you've got that kind of qualification side, actually that bit's quite important, there's another big chunk that actually, if you've been working in another industry, you can bring that kind of shared learning in. So yeah, whether it's things like, work at height or confined spaces, some of that could be a bit more specific, but I think there's loads of shared learning from other industries that, maybe have a look at some of the webinars, things like that, and see if you can link the experience you've had in another sector and bring it into broadcasting and telecoms. Yeah, there's a lot we can share across there. You wanted to add, Derek?
So, yeah, I totally concur with what you said. I mean, I sort of wrote down technical skills, and it's around having an appreciation of what the operative are undertaking. So if we were talking in the wireless space, so on the mobile phone masts with it, and the lads are, up on the towers, is actually understanding what the risks and how they control them. And it may not be very black and white when they do that. And if we then transfer that maybe into the fixed line sort of space, where we've got a lot of current build going on, where the telephone network is now being upgraded to optical fiber, so it's basically all the copper networks coming out. And so the technical skills and have an appreciation around that, around what the operatives are the risks around what the operatives are undertaking to roll that type of network out as well. And with it, and what different types of methods, controls that we put in place, so that these telecom networks are rolled out and upgraded, to 5G. And we've got gigabit broadband going in at the moment as well, and also and also going to touch on the broadcast side of it, where a lot of that's all where there used to be quite big industries. That's now all fragmented into smaller sort of companies who are now doing a lot more remote type works, and around having that risk assessing, and again having those technical skills of being able to rig road systems correctly, so they can get cameramen into those positions where they can get those shots for for that nature program, etc., with it.
Fantastic, thank you. And you keep on leading me into my next question, which is making my life a lot easier. We touched on what you need from an operational side of things, and potentially from a technical qualification side of things, if you want to be on ground level, getting involved in the industry itself. But let's say potentially from a health and safety role specifically, so whether that's a compliance manager or an advisor or something along those lines, for a telecommunications company, what 3 pieces of advice would you give to someone going into that health and safety role specifically, as opposed to an on the ground operational role?
Well, I think the single biggest thing I would say is having a flexible mindset approach. It's interesting. This industry tends to, I don't know why, but it tends to attract a lot of veterans. Simply because you're out on your own or in small teams, overcoming some quite dynamic risk assessment you have to do in order to achieve those, achieve that project aim that needs to be done with it. And having a flexible mindset, being able to potentially sometimes just think outside the box, go the extra distance, and able to collaborate with your fellow team members, with the HSEQ advisor, to come to a solution that may not be gold plate in the actual controls itself, but fundamentally underwrites, the significant risks by saying like, really, really helps with it, rather than just sort of come up with a, I don't know, a black and white answer you'll get from a textbook.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. It's you have to be dynamic, don't you? And there's often a tendency of people coming in from a paperwork, health and safety point of view, where there's a cookie cutter approach that should just work on paper, and it's not necessarily always like that. Is there anything you'd like to add on to that, Adam? Just as far as
But yeah, I mean, I guess what the first thing to say, is getting involved actually. So there's loads of stuff out there. In the FAR group, there's some webinars that will be out there. There's also some other groups that are around in the industry. So there's Shift from a fixed telecoms perspective. You've got MATS from a mast and tower safety. So actually, a number of these organisations, they're sort of talking about best practice are sort of similar in the broadcasting space as well. And actually, sometimes that can give you a little bit of an insight as to what's going on in that industry, what some of the kind of latest learning is. So you can do a little bit of research. I mean, one of the first bits is, maybe does that look interesting, and is it something I want to do? Because that can give you a little bit of a point around it. And maybe the other is just getting a mentor. So even if it's just someone that you can just have a bit of a chat to in the industry and say, what's it like? What are you doing? What's the kind of day to day like? Because it can be a bit of an odd industry, because our workplace is essentially everywhere. You're fitting telecoms to houses and businesses and power stations and stuff. So from a role perspective, it's quite broad. So yeah, finding someone you can have that honest chat with and say, what's going on, what's it like. Probably one of the best ways I could recommend of seeing what's going on, and whether it's an industry that someone would be interested in.
Yeah, exactly that. It's just you using the benefits of IOSH and the groups and everything that's present to kind of nail down what you might be interested in, and then having the luxury of having all those mentors and groups and people there that can kind of point you in a better direction, which IOSH is fantastic at. Perfect. Well, those are my few questions, Darren. But I'm going to hand over to Alfie now, and Siri's going to carry on.
Thank you, Tristan. That again, as before, it's like this has been rehearsed, but this does lead us on to the next question really nicely. In order to give a further insight to our fellow future leaders, what would you say are the top risk issues and challenges that are specific to the industry?
Yeah, so that's a good question, because I mean, as I said, it's fascinating. I've spent time in Irish to see an industry that has so much, right? Whether it's workplace transport or driving or pressure vessels for pressurized cables to confined spaces, work at height, street works. There's so much that actually different parts of the industry go through. I mean, I think for me, as I said at the start, that dynamic risk assessment piece is quite key, because people are on their own a lot, and even if the process is the same, so you take fitting a line into someone's home, someone's got an extension, or they've got a gravel driveway, or they've got some parked cars, or they've got a decorative lion in the garden, right? But you have to kind of work around and think, how am I going to fit this in? I think that whole dynamic risk assessment piece is quite challenging. As I said, that slip, strips and falls, is still one of the biggest parts, and it is because that mindset is, well, where's the cable going to go? What am I going to do? I'm not looking at that decorative lion, right? That I tripped straight over. So I think you get things like that. The streetworks one, I think, is quite big. I think doing any work in the highway or in a high street or on the footway, everyone's really busy. They're trying to get where they're going. We're trying to open up the footway and put some barriers in. People aren't necessarily looking at that. They're looking at where they're going. So I think that streetworks piece can be quite key. I guess the last one I would call out is probably the violence abuse side. Unfortunately, it's something that's rising a lot, and I think you see it across a number of sectors actually. But whether people don't like that you're digging up the pavement and what you're doing in the highway, but also I think people have become quite reliant on their internet connection, and I think when that's not working, you can pick up those frustrations, and whether it's engineers being locked in someone's home or just being shouted at because it couldn't be fixed on the day. I think actually preparing people for actually how you deal with that and how you get out of those situations is becoming quite an important one. I don't know if you're seeing similar, Derek.
Yeah, I wrote a quick 3 pieces down. Obviously, so just to give like a synopsis of where the back committee sits, is currently at the moment within telecoms there is a massive growth in the industry. We've got a new industry that's been born out of the sort of the old OpenReach space with the copper network, where they've got these new fiber optic cables, and that's all of it's getting replaced in the whole of the UK currently at the moment. We've also got this all the 5G networks, so fast data comms in that's also getting rolled out on top of what the 4G that they also put in. And then also then so with these comes the stresses of like street works, and actually literally, and where I've heard like from some of the government lobby groups is that pretty much every street in the whole of the UK will be dug up in the next 15 years in order as a part of us becoming carbon neutral, and a part of that will be the telecom networks, and then there's obviously the other utilities networks. And then going on from that is obviously then we've also got the broadcast side of it, and they obviously with their riggers working at height with the setting their works up as well. It also sort of comes in. So from a risk perspective, I would say definitely the street work side of it, just by the sheer weight of work that's going on, and then also the working at height, simply because we still see that we report as the biggest health and safety risk within the HSE figures that get released to the UK.
Thank you. Such a vast area, and that constant evolving with the times, with the 5G networks and meeting with the carbon neutral demands as well.
I'm trying to think what it was called. It was Maslow's is it hierarchy of need? Yeah, where you basically have got like the lowest form is fires, food insecurity, and then you get to the highest form. And essentially, I've seen it being re-engineered now, whereas the lower form of it now is actually having an internet connection, because it causes anxiety amongst some of our members of our community with it. If it, in fact, physically not having a connection or a connection that actually cancel everything you will, which is an interesting sort of concept with it.
Oh, I mean, right. So I'm going to move on to the next question, because again, this moves swiftly on. We've already touched base on the different industries, but what range of industries does the Broadcasting and Telecommunications Group represent?
Okay, so we've got broadcast, and so we've got outside broadcasts, and that can be anything. That literally where they will have a small team doing an outside interview somewhere to actually sit there and film in a part of a sequence on film with it. They've also and that's like a lot of that's dynamic and risk assessed with the safety guys that they have. We've also got the internal broadcast as well, so they've got the studios and the amounts of the rigging lights and all the rest of it, etc. And a lot of these internal the studios where they have to have like lads who have to go up or folk and move those lights around, etc. as well. And also, I think people forget as well in the broadcast space as well, they also have their own big sites, so they have their own broadcast towers that are owned, so like the BBC do, and they have to be maintained as well. If we move into the wireless space, telecoms, we've then got them sort of the mobile phone networks, and also increasingly a lot of the utility networks now will go wireless. So things like smart meters are all connected up. You also obviously got mobile phone sort of technology, and some of that technology is now moving into the driverless cars and some of the autonomous robot transport systems, and also the satellite, so the Earth stations as well. And then the last piece we've also see is the fixed line, which is the basically our copper network, now moving to optical fiber, and that will also cover folk like will do the undersea cables that get laid between countries and of course the oceans, etc. So we can connect more. We got more bandwidth to connect more people and push more information across as well. So yeah, it's the interesting piece around this is the fact that it covers a quite a big remit of how we communicate, but it's now very data hungry, and by that we have to keep upgrading the networks.
Constant demands, definitely.
Definitely. Yeah.
Is there anything to add to that at all, Adam?
Yeah, I guess, as I said, within the group, there'll be a whole mix of people from that content creation space, and whether that's again, I guess even kind of post-COVID times, right? Whether it was talking to people or streaming, whatever, there seems to be ever increasing demand for that, and ever we want more content, we want it in a higher definition to fit on our bigger TV, and it's like, well, actually now my broadband can't cope with that TV, and I think that whole demand thing actually as an industry is quite interesting, because I think actually for quite a while actually there wasn't a massive amount of change, whereas now you've got a lot more companies in the kind of market, and that's both actually on the telecom side and content creation and the broadcast side. There's kind of an explosion of stuff taking off there, so yeah, there's a lot going on there, and a lot of opportunities. I think that, as I said, based on the previous one, there's a lot of transferable skills around those temporary works, dynamic assessment. I think there's a lot there that actually we could be bringing in from other sectors.
Brilliant. So that's going to bring me on to the last question. I understand that the group aim to select a focus area each year. Could you tell me a little bit more about this year's focus area and how IOSH members can get involved?
Yeah, so I think we had, as part of our overall IOSH plan, we have a number of sort of areas that we look at, and I think things like dynamic risk assessment have been on there quite a bit, and there's some other things we've had in the plan around asbestos and EMFs, electromagnetic fields, from a telecoms perspective. But I think it's fair to say, Derek, that we're still really working on what this year's key theme will be. We suspect it will be around something linking in that dynamic risk assessment piece, because whether you're building a telecoms network or doing an on-site broadcast or shooting for some new content, actually that whole, you can't just say, well, I tell you what, let's hang on a sec, we'll go back and think about that, and how it's like, no, we're filming it now. So I think it's a fantastic place to be, where you've got that whole kind of things you have to assess there and then, and how we share that learning across the community, so that we, if someone's been through an event and say, actually, look, this happened, this is how we assessed it, what does people think? You get a great opportunity to share the learning with others. So yeah, I think that would be a big part. Have you got any thoughts, Derek?
Certainly, I would like to see some some more working at height focus, or some focus on the working at height space as well. I think it'll cover all the three sub industries that we have within the in the broadcast telecoms field. So I think there's definitely folk can learn from that, and the fact that some of our membership actually are international members. So what we consider is a mature health and safety community here, so would definitely help some of our overseas members just to get their telecom workers just to wear a harness and actually use it appropriately when they're out working. There's a definite piece of knowledge to be shared that, and then there's obviously the other things as well as these industry safety groups that we've got. Obviously in the wireless space we've got the mass and tower safety group. In the fixed line space we've got the new what they call it shift, which is the safety and health in fiber telecoms. It's up and running. We've got the LinkedIn page, and then we've also got the IOSH microsites as well, so we can get the information out. There are also, if some folk follows some of the LinkedIn posts around some of the Voku posts regularly. There are opportunities for some self-learning, some information that comes on from webinars that comes outside of us that we tend to promote. So there was a good one by an individual who promoted to like construction design management in telecoms, which I think he's had they've produced a course that will be great for someone who's coming into the industry to jump on, so take their CDM skills and then being able to put that into a telecom into the telecom space. There's obviously it's a great opportunities.
Definitely. It's amazing. I just can't believe how vast the industry is, and I've learned so much just by today's quick fire questions. So on that note, I'd like to say thank you to both Derek and Adam. You've provided us with a lot of information, and I'm sure the rest of the future leaders will find this interesting and valuable for them, should they choose to come and have their careers within the telecoms and broadcasting industry. Are there any final words from you at all?
It's been, for me, I've been really grateful to the industry. I've had a fabulous career here. I've worked right across the whole spectrum, and I've also worked in the safety spectrum across all of it as well. And actually I've sort of now got quite a senior role, and that actually I've really have sort of started to cement now is getting industry advice out there as well, which is, it's fantastic. It's unheard of, I think, like maybe certainly 10 years ago. And anybody coming into it now, there's a multitude of opportunity now to actually sit there and have an impact. Here to sit there and make sure that folk are, when they're working, they're safe.
Brilliant. No, for me, thank you both for the opportunity to come and talk about what the group does. And actually, if there's any future leaders that are interested, obviously by all means, get in touch. I think there's some of the details we've provided in a bit, but yeah, no, thank you, because as I said, it's an industry that's there's a lot going on both in the content generation and in the broadcast telecom space. So yeah, thank you both very much.
Okay,
thank you.